Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to our YouTube channel and welcome to this video. This is John from Programming Knowledge and I would like to welcome you all to this brand new tutorial series where we will talk about PWA or Progressive Web Apps. So basically, as you can see here, I have a web application and this is a contact organizer where you can add a certain contact. For example, you could click on this plus icon and then you can specify the contact name and of course the contact number right here, and then go ahead click on this particular add contact button. So you could also click on this hamburger icon on the top of the app and you can browse the home page and about page of this particular application. So guys, this is PWA or meaning Progressive Web App, and I'm gonna teach you on how to create this particular application. This is a web application. Once again, this is a web application that serves as or that acts like a mobile application. So basically, you can install this particular app to your Android phone, to your iOS phone or iOS device, and of course you can install this to your browser, for example, or to your computer by using your browser. So if you click on this plus icon right here, you have an option to install this particular app. So if you go ahead and click on the install, then the application or the web application will be installed to your computer, to your browser. If you're using your iOS device, then you can add the app to your phone, and of course if you're using Android, then you can also add this particular application to your home page or to your home screen. Okay, so we will be talking about that in this particular video tutorial series, and this particular app supports offline, meaning if we go offline with this particular application, we can still get all the data. So for example, I will try to click on this offline option right here, which simulates the offline behavior of our application. So we're still getting this data. By the way guys, I'm using Firebase database for this particular application, and of course if you're using Firebase database, that means that your data will be hosted online or remotely. So but still I can get the data coming from Firebase if this particular application, or even if this particular application is offline. So later on in this video or in this video tutorial series, I will teach you how to sync your PWA app and like for example saving your data locally, and then later on if you have the internet connection, then you can sync back your data to your Firebase database online. So if you want the starter files for this particular video tutorial series, I have it uploaded to GitHub, and I will add the link to the description box below. You can follow this link, and of course you can download the starter files for this particular video tutorial series. And the starter files include the CSS file, the image files, and of course the icons, JS files inside the JS directory, and we also have the pages, and lastly the index.html file that basically holds the structure of our application or PWA app. Now in this particular video tutorial series, we're going to be using Materialize CSS, and if you want to get started with Materialize CSS, you can go ahead and open up materializecss.com and click on this getting started link, where you will have an option to download or use the CDN for the Materialize CSS. And also in this video, we're going to be using VS Code to write our code or to add components to our application or web application. And by the way guys, we're not gonna dig deeper to the Materialize CSS. We're just gonna use the classes, and of course if you want to learn more about Materialize CSS, you can go through with the documentation, familiarize the classes that you want to use for Materialize CSS. But this particular application, as I've said, is using Materialize CSS, and I'm gonna guide you through the steps on how you can set up this particular starter files. And of course, if you want, you can just download the starter files from this GitHub repository. Now, the starter files will look like this. Okay, so you have the CSS directory, you have the img folder directory, which contains the icons. So I have created icons for different sizes or screen sizes. So we have 72 and until 512 pixels, 384, 192, and so on. So I also have this icon right here, which is programming contacts or pk contacts.png, and this will hold the image for our contacts, as you can see here, right here. There you go. And after that, we have also the JS directory, which contains the common.js and materialize.mean.js. So the common.js hosts this particular JavaScript code right here, which enables the side navigation for our side menu and side form. As you can see here, if you click on this particular icon, hamburger icon, then the side menu will be displayed, and the same thing for the plus icon. The new contact form will be displayed on the screen, where you can specify the name of the contact and of course the contact numbers. Okay, and next we have the materialize.mean.js included in our file right here, and we also have pages. So the pages consist of the about.html file right there, and also contact.html, and we're gonna be, maybe we'll try to do works or add content to the contact.html file later on, but our focus is this index.html. So the index.html contains this particular code. We have here the HTML tag, head, and then body tag, and also the closing body and HTML tag. And of course, inside here we have set the title into Programming Knowledge Contacts. So basically, this is for contact organizer for Programming Knowledge. So I have I created this particular concept for this particular tutorial. Now I have added the Materialize mean.css right here. So this is coming from the CSS directory that we have here. And also we're including the Materialize, the material icons coming from Google APIs right here. So link and then href to https and then googleapis.com, and then the icon family, which is material icons. Okay, and then for the style sheet, another style sheet is the styles.css coming from our CSS directory right here. And also we included the JS files for Materialize. So we will be using the Materialize mean.js to animate our side menu and of course the side form right here. So that's what we're trying to use here. Where is it? Common.js. This is the code that we use for hiding and displaying the side menu that we have here and the side form. So the side form, this is for adding this is not recipe, this is adding contacts, right? Add contact right there, and then the second or the first one is for the menu right there. Now let's try to add components or add elements to our index HTML, because for now this is currently empty right here, but we can try to add more elements to this. So the first thing that we're gonna be adding is, of course, the navigator, or I mean the navigation. So we're gonna be adding nav here. So let's just add first the comment. So tap nav. In here, we're gonna be adding a nav component or element, and then it will have a class of z, the 0, and inside here we're gonna be adding a div right here, and it's going to have a span. This is for the hamburger icon. So let's just add class for this. So this will have nav wrapper, and then container, and then the span will have class left. So we're gonna be positioning the hamburger icon on the left side of the screen. So it will have gray text, but we're gonna be trying to darken the text by 1. So this is coming from Materialize Css. So if you're not familiar with that, then you have an option to browse through the documentation of Materialize Css. And we have I. So we're gonna be adding a span right here, and then or not span, let's add class to this. So the class will be material icon or icons, and then side nav trigger. So we're adding this particular class because that's the that will try to trigger the opening of the side menu later on. So side nav trigger, and then we're gonna be adding a data attribute right here. So data target equals side menu. Okay, and then we're gonna be adding menu right here. So this is for the hamburger icon, and of course we want to have the some sort of logo. So we're gonna be adding link to that, and this will be on the root directory or root path to the app. Okay, and then we will have the right class to this, meaning we're gonna be positioning this particular link on the right side of the screen, and this will have a span element right here. Let's say contacts, and then PK. So PK stands for programming knowledge. So let's save this and let's start to preview our app. So basically what we have here is the structure. We have here the navigation, and we also have the link PK contacts right here, right? So let's try, let's make this side by side maybe. Okay, so what we could do now is to add the side menu. So outside the tab nav right here. So this will be the side nav menu, and it will have the UL element, and the ID will be side menu. You have to make sure that this particular ID is the same side menu side menu here. because this will this particular menu right here, the hamburger icon, will try to target this particular element with this particular ID. So class, and this will have side nav and then side menu. Okay, and we will add here li element. So this is for the root link, for example. So we're gonna be adding class to this, for example, subheader, and it will say pk contacts, and then we're going to add another one. So href, and the same here, we're gonna be using href. Let's say home, waves effect, and the next one will be pages, and then about.html, and then about. Okay, save that, and let's try to preview our app. So there you go, we have this particular side menu right here for our home and about section. So let's make this better by just adding more elements to our page. So side nav menu, and of course we're gonna be adding here the container for our contacts. So class, so this will hold the contacts that we have added to the app. So gray text, and then we're gonna be we'll try to darken the text by 1. Again, this is coming from Materialize CSS. So if you have like questions to this, or maybe you want to learn more something about the Materialize CSS, then you can browse the official homepage of the Materialize CSS. Okay, and for the side form, I'll just copy and paste a code right here that will represent the form or the side form of our app. So this will have the div, and of course the form, and also the inputs for name and the input for numbers. Okay, and of course the add contact button right here. So if we try to save this, we can see that if we need to add the plus symbol. Add symbol. So let's just copy and paste right after the contacts container. Then we're gonna add the add or the plus button. So save that, and then preview. Then we have here the plus button right here. So if you click on this, then you'll get this particular new contact side form. And of course this is responsive, so it will look good on mobile also, so or on different screen sizes. There you go. This is the first step for our PWA app. So now in this video, guys, we're gonna be adding a new feature to our PWA app. Basically, we will start adding the PWA support for our project, and this is a contact organizer project, meaning we could add contacts to this, view contacts that has been added, and also we could delete the contacts. And basically we want this particular app to be supported, or it should work offline, and it should also persist data. Say for example, if you're offline and you have added a new contact, then whenever you go online, then the offline data should be also uploaded to Firebase database. So for now, let's just add first a dummy data for our app, and as you can see now, the app is empty. Right here we don't have contacts. So what we will do is to add dummy data first. So let's open up our index.html, and then inside the contacts container, here contacts div, we're gonna add a dummy data first. So let's just add a div element, and then let's add a class to this. So let's make it a gray text, and we will darken the text by 1. And let's add another class, pk contact, and also we're gonna add the contact image. So here we're gonna add the contact image. So class and then contact image. And again guys, as I've said from the previous tutorial, all these classes, for example the custom classes that we have used here, are present here in our styles.css. For example, contact dash image, and for now it has this with 60 pixels. And of course, by the way, if you want to get the starter files of our PWA app or project, then you can follow the link that is on the description box below. So it is a GitHub link where you can download the starter files for this particular video tutorial. Now let's continue with our index.html. So inside the contact image div, let's add the actual image. So that will be img tag, and then the source will be coming from our image directory, and then pkcontacts.png, and then let's just add an alternative text. So let's just say here contact thumbnail. So after this particular div, we're gonna add another div for the details of our contact. So meaning this particular div will contain the name of our contact and also the numbers, or the contact numbers for this particular contact. So contact details, it will have another div, and it should hold the name. So for example, the name John Doe, and let's just add another div for the contact number. So let's just add 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9, and in here we're gonna add a class to this class, and then contact, I'm using contact title to this title, and for the numbers, then we're gonna use contact and then numbers. There you go. And of course, another div is for the options. So as you can see from the previous tutorial, we have an option to delete or to call the contact. So that's what we're trying to do here. So div class, and then contact options, and in here we're gonna add the material icon. So class, and then material icons, and then let's just add the call icon, so it represents the telephone or the call icon. So, and then let's just duplicate this and call this delete outline, so it will display the delete icon, which is a trash can or trash bin. Okay, so material icons and call and delete underscore outline. So let's just save this and go back to our browser, and as you can see here, we do have a first contact dummy data that we have here. So of course we can duplicate this. So for example, we want to duplicate this. Okay, so all we have to do is copy all the elements that we have here and then paste it here, and let's just change the name into Dominic Wilkins or something, and the same number. So save, and we should be getting 2 contacts right here with all the information, the image thumbnail, the name, the contact number, the same thing with the other record, and it also has the delete icons and of course the call icon. So maybe later on we will add a feature to this. So for example, if you click on this call icon, so you should be able to contact or manage to call the contact. So by just using the numbers indicated right here, so you should be able to call the contact and make sure to use a correct number or contact numbers. There you go. So the next step will be to add a functionality to this, or PWA functionality to this. And the first step for adding a PWA support is to add a manifest file for this particular project. So it will serve as a manifest, and it will provide about information about a web application, and typically it is on JSON text file format. So it is necessary for the web app to be downloaded and be presented to the user similarly to a native application. So this particular web manifest file will serve as the like an information for the app, and it will help us to make the app be installable to the device or whatever the user is using. So it could also include the name of the app, the author, the icon, the version, description, and a list of all necessary resources and among other things that can be included inside the manifest file. So if you want to add a manifest file to your project, all you have to do is create a manifest file right here inside the root directory of your project. So what you could do is right click here and then new file, and what you could do here is type in the manifest.json or JSON. So in here it will accept values or key value pairs, and each of the key value pair signifies a unique information about our application. So I've said that it could contain the name of the app, the short name of the app, the URL, the background color, the icons, and more. So basically it is a JSON format. So all you have to do is add in curly braces right here, and you have to specify the name. For example, so I'll just name the app for now as PK contact or programming knowledge contact, and the short name will be short underscore name, and then I'll just use the same PK contact as the short name. And we could also set the start URL. So for example, we want to use the index.html as our starting file for this. We could also try to change the display, for example, standalone. There you go. It means that we can install the app and it will serve us, or it will behave as an independent app. You could also set here, for example, minimal UI browser if you don't want to install the application or let the user to install the application. So you can specify browser right here as the value instead of standalone. So the next value will be background color. So it will represent, of course, the background color of your app. And for now, I'm just going to use this particular value. So for the B6AC. But you could always choose your own color. But in my case, I just want to use this particular color right here. So another one for the theme color, I'll just add 0069 and 5C. And we could also set the orientation of our app, and I want this app to be portrait primary. Okay. And of course, if you want to know more about the key value pairs that you could add here, you could check the official developer page of PWA. You can check that. I think I'm gonna add also the link in the description box below. You could just follow that link, so you could know the other values that you could add for your application. And of course, right here we can set the icons for our app. And of course, this particular icons key, it has like an array of elements, and it could also have different values and different sizes. We're gonna add more key value pairs to this. So basically what we'll want is to add the icon sizes for our application. So basically we want our icon to look good even if we use different device for our PWA app or project. So basically what we will do here is add this particular value. So we have here icons, and then right inside that square brackets, then we're gonna add the curly braces, which contains the source, the type, and the size for this particular icon. So the first one is the icon 72.png, and of course the size for that is 72 pixels by 72 pixels. So that's the first icon that we want to use. And as you can see here inside our image or img directory, we're using, or we do have this different icon sizes: 72, 96, 128, 144 until 512. So we're just gonna duplicate this and change the size accordingly. So this is for icon 96, of course, and this is 96. So I'm just gonna fast forward the video so that you won't have to watch me changing all these values right here. So there you go, we added the rest of the sizes of our icon. So we now have 72, 96, 128, 144, 1529, 12384, and 5112 as the size for our icons. Again, this is for the different device that we're gonna use to open up our app. So for example, if you're using tablet or smartphones, of course smartphones comes with different sizes, so you have to make sure that you cater all those sizes by using different icons that we have here. So after editing and adding all this key value pairs, we're gonna save this, of course, and we're gonna add that here inside our index.html, and we will make sure that we have the manifest.json added here inside our index.html. So that will be link, and then the real type will be manifest, and then of course we have to make sure that we include the correct name of our manifest.json file. So you have to make sure, and you gotta check that it is the same here inside our Project Explorer. So manifest.json and manifest.json. So there you go. And if we try this, let's open up this inside our browser. So right now we're gonna check if the manifest.json file works for our application. So for us to make sure that the changes will reflect, we're gonna refresh our page, and also let's check the application tab right here inside your console. I mean developer tools, and then you could click the manifest. So if your manifest.json file works, then you can see all the information right here. So for example, the identity, so we have here the name, we have the short name, we have for the presentation group, then we have the start URL, which is the index.html that we have specified in our manifest.json file. We have also the theme color, so I'm using this particular theme color, and also we have the background color, orientation, display, and of course the icons that we have defined. So for example, the 72 by 72 pixels, and of course the other sizes as well. Now I'm getting this particular errors and warnings here. So the actual size 500 by 500 pixels of icon 5112. So I think we could change this later on. I think I have used 500 pixels instead of 512. So maybe we could change this later on. We could set the size of our icons. This is actually 500 pixels by 500 pixels, the size of this, and I'm using 512 by 512 here. So that's why it's complaining right here that we have an actual size of 500 instead of 5112. And as you can see here, for the installability, we are getting this particular warning also. No matching service worker detected, so you may need to reload the page or check that the scope of the service worker for the current page a page encloses the scope and the start URL from the manifest. So basically guys, if you're using or if you are developing PWA, then there's like things that you want or things that you need in order for your progressive web app to work. So of course the fact of the matter that we are that we created the manifest.json. So manifest.json is also one of the files that we need in order for the PWA app to work. So the second thing that we need, or the second file that we need, or I mean component or aspect that we need for our PWA is of course the service worker. So far we haven't added the service worker for our project. So let us add that inside our project. So basically what we will do is create files right here inside our project. So the first thing, or the first file, will be sw.js. So SW stands for, of course, service worker.js. So we will place all the service worker scripts that is needed for our app. We don't want to place this inside the pages or other subdirectories of our project. And of course, we want this to be on the root level of our project. That's because if we place it right here inside the pages file or pages directory, then it will not be, or the scope will be only this directory. It will not cover the whole project and only this particular directory pages. And the same thing, if we place this inside the JS file, then the service worker will have only the scope of the JS directory. Okay, so you have to make sure that you place the service worker.js file on the right, on the root directory of your project. So the second thing that we're going to do here is to add a script or another JS file inside this particular JS project, or JS directory. So all we have to do is click on the new file, and then we're gonna add here the app.js. So basically what we will do here is, register the service worker coming from the root directory of our project, and then register that here inside our app.js file. So the first thing that we're going to need is, of course, because not all browsers support PWA as of the moment, so we need to have a check if the service worker is supported inside the browser. So let's just add here, check if service worker is supported. So of course we're gonna use service worker, or a condition that check if the service worker is in the navigator. So basically the browser contains this navigator, and we're just checking if the service worker is inside this navigator or this browser, or in other words, we're just checking if the browser supports this service worker thing. So if the service worker is supported, then we're just gonna use the navigator and then service worker, and of course we're just gonna register our service worker file, and of course that's sw.js. Okay, so this is our sw.js right here. So what we could do first here is we could try to log something inside our sw.js file. Okay, so this is a promise. Okay, so this is a promise, so it may or may not return something, and it will take time to process. So what we could do here is we could add the then method, and it's going to take in one parameter. So we're just using the reg object right here, and console.log, and then we're just gonna say service worker registered. Okay, and the reg parameter that we're using right here, or the return of this particular code right here, and then it's a promise. So if it returns something, then we're just gonna console log the return value. Otherwise, we're gonna catch an error. So, and then console.log service worker not registered, maybe some error or something, and we're just gonna display the error that that has been returned coming from the this particular line of code right here. So save this, and inside our service worker, we're just gonna say here first console.log service worker inside sw.js. So save, and let us preview our project. So reload and service worker, and let's just check for the console. Yeah, before of course, before all these things should work, we need to add that inside our because currently we're not using the app.js file. So basically what we could do is input that, or include that inside our index.html right here. So we have here the common.js right here, and of course we need one or another line for our app.js so that our service worker will be called and registered. So app.js, and save that and go back to our browser, and we're getting this particular error, reference error reg is not defined. Let's see, app.js. Okay, so it should be placing it right here. So app.js, and we're just now have this particular output, service worker registered, and this right here contains all the information for our service worker. So that's the first step, or the second step for creating a PWA app. And before we proceed with the implementation of our PWA project, let's try to look at first the life cycle of our service worker. So this is one of the most important aspects when it comes to learning the implementation of progressive web app, and it will help us to avoid complications and problems later on during the implementation of our project. So basically, from the previous tutorials, we already have different files inside our project, such as the index.html, styles.css. So these two files are responsible for the structure, the arrangement of different elements inside our app. We also have the app.js, and this particular file is responsible for registration or registering our service worker. So we don't want to use the UI.js or the common.js that we have, because we want this particular app.js or the service worker to be on different thread from the UI. And also we also have the pages directory, which contains the about.html and also the contact.html. And later on in this video tutorial series, we're going to be adding different elements also to our contact.html file. So if you want to add, contact form, if the user wants to contact for the developers. And we also have the service worker file. So it is represented by the sw.js. So this is simply all the logic concerning the service worker. So first off, for the life cycle, the app.js file will try to register our service worker, or the sw.js, and it's gonna try to invoke this install event, and we can add callback functions to this particular install event. So if the registration of the service worker is successful or not, then we can try to display something. So for example, if the registration or the install is not successful, then we could display a warning to the user or yeah, to the user that the service worker is not available or something. And during or after this install event, then of course our service worker becomes active, and it will try to invoke this active event. And again, we can also add callback functions to this. And if the service worker becomes active, now that means that the service worker can now try to listen for events or any activity within the life cycle of our PWA project, or the progressive web app that we are trying to implement. And if we want to change something on the service worker.js file, then here's what happens. So the file swd.js is changed, then it's gonna try to wait for if we want, if it's not going to install the service worker again, it will try to wait if the user closes all the browser or the app itself. Then on the next load of the app, then it's going to try to install the service worker, and then it will activate the new version. So if you change this sw.js file, it will not activate already, or it will not activate readily with page reload, because the service worker is already installed. So it will try to wait for the user to close the app or close all the tabs on the browser, so that the changes to the swd or sw.js file will be reflected to the newly version service worker. And it's going to follow the same route. So install event, active event, and of course if our service worker file is active or service worker is active, then it will try to listen for any activity that we have inside our PWA app. So now let's try to look at this inside our project, and let's go to our VS Code. So this is what we have so far for our PWA project, and from the previous tutorial we implemented this. So as you can see, we have here the app.js and also the sw.js, and we place it here at the root directory of our project, so that we have the global scope for our service worker. So let's try to check this inside our browser. Then let's go to our console, and if we open this, as you can see here, we have already registered or displayed the service worker registered. So that's coming from our app.js right here. So service worker registered, and if we open the service worker object right here, service worker registration, and under scope, we can see here that we have the root directory as the scope. So basically now we have the global scope of the service worker. If we try to move this inside the JS file right here, so let's try to move this. Okay, and let's update the app.js file. So it will be js/sw.js. So let's save this, and let's go back to our browser and refresh. Let's see the scope. So as you can see here, the scope says that we have this 1270.0.1, and then the port number 5501/js. So that means the current scope of the service worker is inside the JS file. So that's why we want this sw.js at the root directory of our project so that we will have a global scope. And we want this global scope because of course we want to access all the necessary files inside here for our service worker. So let's just update this for now. Instead of JS, we're just gonna base the sw.js file right here. Okay, so save this, and of course this is what we're trying to do here. We're just checking if the service worker is supported. As you can see, because not all browsers supports service worker. So if we open up the Can I Use website, so service worker, and as you can see, the Internet Explorer does not support the service worker. Edge has support, and Firefox, all the red ones meaning that this particular version of Firefox not supporting the service worker. So the green ones meaning supporting the service worker. So you have to make sure that you check this Can I Use website to check if the service worker is supported or not. So that's why we're checking also here in our app.js if the service worker in Navigator is present in the Navigator object. And if it is present, then we will try to register the service worker and specifying the file of our service worker.js. Now what we could do inside our service worker file, instead of directly logging the installation of the service worker, so let's comment this one out for now, and let's try to look at the install service worker event that we will try to add. So install service worker, and in here I'm just gonna say self and then add event listener, and this should have the install event, and let's add a callback function right here. So event, and then open and close curly braces, and we're just seeing here that we're just trying to add event listener, and if it is an install event, we're just gonna fire the callback function, and the callback function will just have the console log, and then we can say here service worker has been installed. There you go, and then semicolon. Save our service worker file, and go back to our browser and refresh. So we now have the, let's try to clear our storage for now, site data, and G4, refresh, go back to our console. So we have here service worker has been installed and service worker registered. So this means our service worker is working. So from the previous tutorial, we have implemented the install event listener for the service worker, and we tried to add the console lag service worker has been installed, and also we have here the app.js where we try to display also if the service worker is present in the Navigator object, and try to display if the service worker has been registered successfully. So in this particular video tutorial, guys, we're gonna be looking at the activate event for the service worker. So basically, service worker, once we register it for the first time, then it will automatically activate the service worker inside the browser. But it's not the case if we change something in the service worker file, and save it, and it will not activate the new version of our service worker. So what we could do, or what the user could do, is try to close the browser and reopen the browser for the new version of service worker to be reflected inside our browser. So now let's try to look at the activate event. So we're gonna add the code inside our service worker file, sw.js, and in here we have the install service worker, or not really install service worker, we're just trying to add event listener for the installed event, and we're getting the response event object right here, and which contains the callback function, and then try to display that the service worker has been installed successfully. Now what we could do here is try to look at also and try to listen for another event, which is the activate. So activate event, and we're gonna type in here self and then add event listener, and this time we're gonna use activate instead of install. So activate, and then we're gonna have to use the callback function right here whenever we have this activate event right here. So we're just going to display something to the console. So service worker has been activated. So we could try to edit our sw.js file and save that and go back to our browser. So let me close this first, and let me go to the application tab right here, and for now I'm just gonna clear site data, so it will clear all the other information such as the index DB, the SQL cookies, and more for this particular application. So and also the information about our apps, so for example the service workers. So we could clear site data right here, and let's try to go to our console first and refresh, and as you can see here we do have service worker has been installed, service worker has been activated, and of course service worker registered. Now the order of this callbacks right here is not guaranteed, so there are times that you'll be getting activated first, installed, or registered as the first one to be to appear here. So it's not always in order. Okay, now as I've said, if you install and register the service worker first for the first time, then it's going to activate automatically. So we can see here the activated event right here. Now if we try to edit our SW or the service worker file that we have here, so for example we'll try to add here comment, new content for example, save, and it's not going to reflect automatically right here, because we need to reactivate, and currently we're using the update on reload, but if we try to check or uncheck this, let's try to refresh, and for now you can unregister the service worker. So unregister, and then let's try to go to console, and then we're getting installed, activated, registered again. But if we try to remove this or change the content of our service worker file and then go back to the website, then we're not getting the activated event right here. So inside our application, as you can see, the new version of the service worker is waiting to activate right here. So this means that this is the new version waiting to be activated, and the currently active service worker is right here. This is the old version and this is the new version. So whenever we try to edit the service worker, it will not automatically activate the most current version that we have. So there are ways that you can, activate the new version of the service worker. So the first one is to click on this skip waiting. So if you click on that, then the new version of the service worker will be activated, and then all you have to do is refresh the page, so to make sure that the new version will work properly. Okay, and another way to make sure that the new version of the service worker is activated properly. So for example, let's try to remove this, save, and go back to our browser. So we do have here a new version which is waiting to activate, waiting for it to be activated and be applied to the browser itself. Now another, or as I've said, one way of activating is this skip waiting, and another way is to check this update on reload, meaning every time you click or every time you change the service worker file and save that, then it will automatically activate the new version of our service worker. So let's try that. So let's go back here and let's try to add back the comment, activate service worker, and let's save. Okay, so as you can see, we don't have to click on the skip waiting option, so it automatically activated the new version of our service worker. So this is helpful, especially when it comes to developing progressive web app, so you don't have to manually click on the activate option just to reflect the new changes on your service worker file. So if we try to modify this once again, modify, save, and it will automatically activate our new version of service worker. Okay, so now let's try to audit our app and basically see what are the other options or other problems that we might have for this particular PWA implementation. So all you can do is go to this option right here and open up this lighthouse option. So we could see here the categories that we would try to generate report. We could try to check all these options right here, but for now let's just uncheck the SEO and just select progressive web app. So let's try to evaluate our app. So it's auditing and it needs to we need to wait for a few seconds. So right here we do have the different items that we could improve for our progressive web app to function with no problems. So we have here the current page does not respond with 200 when offline. Well, we need to configure this later on, because of course we want our app to run even if it is offline. So we need to configure this also. And then the second problem that we have here is that the start URL does not respond with 200 when offline. Okay, so we need to configure this also. But for the installable area, So we could see that we have the green right here, which means that we're okay for this particular item. So uses HTTPS, but we're not using really HTTPS, but the localhost is an exception for this, so that we could, develop properly the PWA using our local machine. And we also have register a service worker, so we already did that for our app. So web app manifest, so we have this particular file, does not redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS. So if you want to solve this particular problem, you have to deploy your app into a site or a domain that has this HTTPS. Okay, does not set theme color for the address bar. Okay, we're gonna address that later on. Does not provide a valid Apple Touch icon, so we also need to address this particular item later on. And of course, the last one is the manifest doesn't have a maskable icon. So we will address all these problems, and this will all these items will guide us on how to configure our progressive web app. So every time you develop a progressive web app, you have to make sure that you check this particular lighthouse tab and then generate a report for your progressive web app. So from the previous tutorials, we have implemented and added different elements for our PWA project. So we have here a nice looking app where we could click on this hamburger icon and we could see the sidebar menu where we could navigate to the home section and about section of our app. We also have the add contact or new contact form where we could specify the name and the contact numbers of the new contact. Now, in this video guys, we're gonna try to audit our application, and let's try to check and configure all the necessary items that we need in order for us to fully support the PWA implementation. So for example, the offline support, where even if the browser or the phone is offline, we should be able to see a nice interface telling us that we have limited access because of internet issues. Now, in order for us to audit our app, we're gonna have to make use of the lighthouse tab right here. So go ahead and open that one up, and then you can see here the categories for generating report. We have the performance if you wanna check the performance of your app, best practices, accessibility. We have also the search engine optimization right here. But our concern right now will be the progressive web app, or the status. We're gonna check the status of our PWA project, and then you just have to click on that and then click on this generate report, and we will wait for a few seconds and letting the browser to generate the report for us. Now basically what you could see here is the different items that you want to implement to your project. So for example, we have here the report for our PWA project. So there are items here highlighted with red colors, and also the green ones, it means that we already implemented that or configured that particular item. So there are few items right here that we need to address. So for example, the second one is the current page does not respond with a 200 when offline. So basically our app should be able to respond with 200 status when even if the browser or device is offline. So we need to configure that or add that feature, and then we need to address this start URL also. And we also have the PWA optimized section where we could see the items that we need to address. So for example, the redirect to HTTPS we're gonna address that later. And we need to set also the theme color for the address bar, and most of the items right here corresponds to the support for iOS devices. So if you want to support iOS devices, then you have to make sure that you address this particular items right here. So the theme color, the content, we need to provide also the valid Apple Touch icon, and manifest doesn't have a maskable icon, so we need to address that, those items right here. Now what we could do first is try to add the iOS support for our app. So basically what we could do is change or modify our index.html, and then we're gonna add few items, new link here inside our index.html. So just right below the manifest.json link, we could add a comment right here for the iOS support. Okay, and then iOS support, and in between these comments, then we're gonna add the different elements or different lines that could, trigger the support for our iOS devices. So the first one will be a link, and then the link will have a rel attribute which has the value of Apple Touch and then icon, and then the href will be, we're gonna use the 96 or the size 96 of our icon, so icon hyphen 96.png. so this is the icon that we're using right here, and we're gonna add another meta tag right here. The name will be Apple Mobile hyphen web hyphen app hyphen status hyphen bar. So again, this particular lines will try to support or add support for iOS devices. So in here, I'm just gonna use a color 6900695C. Okay, and I'm going to add another meta tag right here, which have the name of theme color. So as you can probably remember, we need to set that right here, theme color for the address bar. So content, and then we could use this particular color right here, 00695C, and close that meta tag right here. So save this, and let's try to audit first our app. So open with live server. Okay, there you go, and right click on the project and then inspect, and then go to the lighthouse section or tab, and then click on the generate report. And again, we're just gonna wait for a few seconds to allow the browser to generate the report for us, and then we could see the updated items. So as you can see here, we have the theme color for the address bar. We already implemented that. The second to the last item, which is the Apple Touch icon. So basically now, this particular item provides a valid Apple Touch icon for our app when it is open with iOS devices. Okay, so the other items, like for example the first one for the PWA optimized section, we're gonna address that later on, because we could add a tunnel, or meaning we could upload our app to a secure domain that uses HTTPS right here. Okay, so for now, let's try to look at the fetch event for our service worker. So basically, we could add a event listener. So far we have the install, we have the activate. Now the third one will be for fetch event. So we're gonna try to look at this particular event. So what we could do here is try to add the event listener, and this time it will be fetch. Okay, and then we're gonna specify a parameter for the callback function. So whenever the service worker sends or detected the fetch event, then it should, run this particular function right here. So what we could do for now is just to display what is inside the event parameter that we specify here. So console.log and then the parameter event or EVT for this particular matter. So event and then close that with a semicolon and then save, or file service worker.js, and let's just open the console. Okay, and then refresh. We should be able to get the output. So add event listener, and then let's try to check for the fetch event right here. Okay, so let's go to the application tab and then service worker, and we should click on this skip waiting option. It is to activate the new version of our service worker without closing the browser or something. So console, let's just refresh our page, and there we could see all the fetch event that has been detected. So each of these objects right here contains the information, what are the resources that has been fetched or requested by our application. So we have here, the first one is Materialize Css. We also have the material icons. We also have the JS file for our Materialize, and also the app.js. So all these files are requested or being requested by our app. So that's why it is being detected as fetch, or being detected inside our fetch event. So like here we have the PNG file for our icons right here, and also we have this material icons fonts right here. We also have the service worker.js file. We also have manifest.json. So again, all these files are being requested by our app. So in the next video, guys, we're gonna try to add or configure adding all these assets into the cache, so that every time our app requests these files, we should be able to get that coming from our cache, and we could support an offline version of our app. So from the previous tutorials, we implemented different elements into our app, and we have the UI, and also we installed or registered our service worker in order to support the progressive web app. Now, so far, we only have installed the service worker, but we don't have yet the support for offline capability of our app, meaning we couldn't open our app when the browser or the device is offline. So we need that particular feature in order to incorporate that into our PWA app or progressive web app. So basically what you can see here is that every time we refresh the page, the app will try to request all the necessary resources. So as you can see here, we have the index.html, we have the materialize mean.css, we have also the icons, we also have the styles right here, for the CSS. This is our custom CSS, and also we have the Materialize, that mean that CSS. This is coming from the Material CSS website. So if you haven't, or I think you already have this particular resources downloaded because you use the starter files for our video tutorial series. And we also have this app.js. Okay, so we created that, and we also have the common.js. I think the app.js is responsible for this one, installing the service worker. So basically, we created that particular JS file, and we also have this common.js. We also have the contacts or PK contacts. So this represents the logo for our programming knowledge contacts.png file. And we also have here the icons family requested by our app. We also have the WS manifest.json, and of course this particular icon 144.png, and this is represented by our fetch event. So as you can probably remember from the previous tutorials, we tried to intercept the fetch event and then call a callback function, and we tried to display what's inside that particular event object right here. So that's why we're getting this particular output, and we can see here the request right here, and then the URL that has been requested. So for example, in this case, we're requesting the Materialize, that mean that CSS. Another thing, for example, this one is requesting for the icon dash 144. This one is requesting for the manifest.json file. So all of this requests should be, or all of these resources inside this particular request should be saved into our cache so that we could support the offline capability of our PWA. Now basically what we could do is add a lot of lines of codes here in our service worker file, and what we could do here is let's try to save the assets that we're gonna save into our cache. So we're using the cache of the browser, and then we're gonna list here all the resources that being requested by the app. So basically we could add the files or resources, so by using this particular variable cache right here, or caches, and then we could open that cache. So this is the cache for our browser, and this particular method or function is asynchronous, meaning it takes time to complete. So in here we could try to add the then function, okay, and it's gonna take the cache object, and we're gonna add here a callback function. So in here we need to specify the name of the cache that we're trying to save the resources into. So what we could do here is add a constant for our cache name. So const and then cache name equals, so for example, all the resources that we're trying to request right here is the default, or meaning this is the necessary resources that the PWA or the project will request, and without these resources our app will not be formed, or otherwise, in other words, this particular resources makes up the building block of our app. So what we need here is the resources, and we're gonna name our cache name as app-shell-resources. So I'm just gonna make it rs, and then later on we're gonna add a versioning for this particular cache, so that we could have a new version for the cache because we're gonna delete or update the cache inside the browser. So for now, let's just name our cache as app-shell or -rsrs. Okay, there you go. And then we can specify the cache name right inside the open function right here. And inside this particular function, we're gonna use this particular object right here, cache. So we're gonna add the resources. So there's two ways on how to add resources to our cache. So we could add or use the add function, or we could also use the add all function, which you can specify several resources. So for example, you could say here add. Okay, so inside here will be the assets that we're gonna try to add to our cache. So basically what we will try to add here is the resources that is being requested by our app. So for example, we have the index.html, the materialize.mean.css, we have the styles and so on. So let's just add that right here. And what we could do is add another constant right here to hold all the necessary assets that we're gonna save to cache. So first will be index.html. There you go. So that's one of the resources being requested by the app. So index.html, and then we have the JS file, which is js/app.js, and then we're gonna add also js common.js, and then the JS file for our materialize. So materialize.mean.js, and then also we have the CSS styles, our custom CSS styles for this particular app. So styles.css, and that's basically here CSS and then styles.css. Another one will be the CSS coming from the materialize, so that will be materialize.mean.css, and basically this is the materialize.mean.css under the CSS directory inside our project. So another one will be the image, and this will represent the icon for the contacts. So programming contacts or programming knowledge contacts.png. We could also add the material icons. So for example, we have here the icons coming from Google APIs right here. So fonts.googleapis.com/icon, and then the family equals material plus icons. So I'll just copy and paste that URL so that it won't take that long to type in this URL of the material icons. So basically we're just trying to save all these resources, okay, into our cache or inside the browser's cache. Now what we could do is add also the root request. So this represents the root request of the app, and then in line with that is the index.html, the app, the common, materialize, styles.css, and the other assets as well. Now what we could do is try to add that particular cons right here, assets. So we could just make this one line, cache.add all, and then the assets. There you go. So what we could do is try this in our browser. Let's go back. Let's refresh this, and let's go to application. There you go. We click on this update on reload. So basically we now have the newest version of our service worker file. and it should save the resources right here in our browser's cache. There you go, and we have here all the resources added. So the Materialize Css, styles, contacts, and the other resources being requested by our app, as you can see here. So that's what we're trying to save by using this particular lines of code here, and then we're adding this into our cache. In the next tutorial, we will try to move this because currently we're adding this automatically, but what we want is to wait for the install event to finish, or call this install event first and then call this add assets. Okay, so from the previous tutorial, we implemented our service worker for this particular application, and we tried to intercept the fetch events coming from our PWA project. So if you try to go here inside our console, we can see here the different fetch event displayed here with all the necessary resources being requested by our app. So for example, in this one, the request, we can see here that this particular request is for the Materialize CSS, and also this one is for, let us see, this one is for the Google API's fonts, which is the material icons. This one is for the CSS. This is our own styles.css. So we define that inside our project, which is here. So basically all the request right here is being requested by our app, and incorporating this request to the app. So for example, the styles, so it applies the styles here inside our app. Now what we want is to save this request into our cache, because eventually we want our app to support offline capability. So that's why we want to save this into our cache, all the resources being requested, and all these resources compose the app shell of our PWA project. So basically, even if the browser goes offline or the device goes offline, the user should, basically see the app with limited capability. So that's why we want to save this resources into our cache, and then later on, if the device goes offline or the browser goes offline, then we could request the resource from the cache of the browser. So that's why we need to save that. So in order for us to do that, we need to go to our service worker file, which is sw.js. So basically, we also save the cache, right? Or the resources into our cache. So if we go to the application and go to the cache storage, and then the app shell resources, we have here all the resources being saved into the cache. The Materialize, CSS, the styles, CSS, contacts, the PNG or the image itself. This is the logo. We also have the index.html, the app.js, and other resource file. Now, as I've said, we're gonna make use of this cache storage, and even if the device goes offline, we can get all these resources coming from our cache. Okay, so now here in our service worker.js file, we have here the assets that we're trying to save, or simply the resources being requested by the app. And currently we're not using this. We're just saving this into our assets, or into the cache of the browser, but we're not currently saving this, or we're not currently using this inside our app. So what we want is to change this service worker files. So we have here the install event right here, or we're simply listening to the install event of the service worker. Now we could move this particular line right here inside the install event. Okay, so basically what we're trying to do is adding the cache or adding the resources into the cache if we detect the installed event of the service worker. So whenever the browser tries to install this particular event right here, we're saving the resources into the cache, not directly as previously configured by us right here. So this is directly saving the resources into the cache, but what we want is wait for the install event, and then inside the installed event we can save the resources into the cache. Okay, and before anything else, also we need to add another method or function right here inside our install event listener. So we're gonna use the event parameter right here, and then we're gonna use the wait until function. Okay, so the purpose of this wait until function is that it prolongs the installed event. Okay, and it's going to wait for adding the resources into the cache. So basically what we're trying to do here is just prolong the event or installed event, and then wait until all the resources are being, saved into the cache of the browser. Okay, so now we have that. We could, save that. And here inside our fetch event right here, what we could do is try to check resources being requested. So if that particular resource is present in the cache, then we're gonna use that. We're gonna use that resource coming from our cache instead of directly requesting that from the URL or from the remote server. So that's why in here inside our fetch event listener, we need to add also some other cache files or some other resources into the cache. So basically, for example, right here we could check if caches that match event that request, then we could return a promise right here, or a then statement or then function, and then we could specify the cache resources right here, and then we could return the caches and then open. But before we proceed, right here we need to add an event. Basically we're just gonna use this event object right here. So event and then respond with. Okay, so this is another method or function that we're gonna use. So basically what this trying to do is we're trying to intercept the fetch event, and then we're adding our own response right here. So event that respond with, so we could configure our own response right here. So basically what we could do is move this right here inside. Okay, and then what we're trying to do here is that we're checking if the cache contains the request event, meaning, so for example, the app requests the styles.css, and if it is inside the cache, then we're gonna add here the then function right here. So basically this particular line is asynchronous, then that's why we could add the then function right here, and then it's going to return the cache resources, or for example the styles.css inside the cache browser or browser's cache. Then what we will do here is to return the resources or the resource itself. So instead of opening, we could make this, or we could return the cache resource right here. So return, and then the cache resources, or the resource coming from our cache, if the cache event or cache has this particular resources being requested. Okay, but there are also times that the cache response, there are cases that it will return an null or empty, because there are cases that you don't already have the asset saved into the browser's cache. So that's why sometimes it returns empty or null. So in that situation, what we could do is add here the two pipes, and basically we just want to return the request. Okay, so again, what we're doing here is we're intercepting the fetch event, and then we're checking if the request is inside the cache. If that's the case, then we could return the cache resources. Otherwise, we will return the request event itself. So let's try this inside our app. So let's go back here and refresh. Okay, and then if we go here in our network, so as you can see here that it is coming from the service worker. So instead of coming from the remote server, this is coming from our service worker, meaning it fetches the event, or fetches the resources coming from our browser or cache of the browser. Okay, so in the next video, we're gonna make use of this particular resources being requested by our app, and then we could support the offline capability of our PWA project. And from the previous tutorial, we have added the resources into the browser's cache, and then use that resources whenever the app requests that particular resource. So in our app, we have here the service worker files. So this is what we have so far from the previous tutorials. We have implemented service worker, and then we implemented the interception of we intercept the fetch event, and then we try to respond or create our own response. Okay, or response, and we check if the cache contains the particular request by our app. Then later on, we could return the cache resource or return the event itself. Now, if we try this inside our browser, you can see here that we're getting this particular output. We're not getting the icons, so I'm gonna explain that in a moment. But for now, if we try to make this offline, so for example, we go to network tab right here, and change this into offline. There you go. So it means that the browser is now offline. And if we try to refresh this, basically we're still getting the display of our app, and that's the heart of the PWA, meaning even if the browser goes offline or the device goes offline, we still can see the app shell. So if we go to another page, for example the about page, you notice that we're getting this particular page. This site can be reached. It means that currently we're not connected to the internet, and we haven't added the about.html file to the browser's cache. So that's why we're getting this particular output right here. So what we need is, of course, to make the other pages as well, or to save the other pages as well. So for example, we want to add the about.html file into the browser's cache, so that later on when our app requested this particular resource, then it will return the resource coming from the cache rather than this particular ugly page that says that we're not getting, or the site can't be reached or something. So, and another thing that I want to explain right here is the icons. So as you can see here, we instead of icons, we're getting this particular lines or this particular text, the call, delete underscore outline, and the menu. So this is for the material icons. And as you notice, if we go back or go here in inside the network, you can see here that we requested the material plus icons. We already added this to the cache, but still we're getting this particular output. That's because if you go here in the preview, you can see here that this particular resource is also requesting another URL or another resource, which is this. As you can see here, the fonts.gstatic.com/s/material icons. So we need that to, or we need also to add this to the cache. Okay, so what we could do is copy and paste this. So let's just highlight this particular resource. This is being requested by the resource that we have saved into the cache. So we need this to save also. We need to save this into our cache. So let's go back to our service worker file, and then inside here we need to add another one for this particular resource, fonts. That's gstatic.com/s material icons and so on. So save this, and let's go back to the browser and go to application. So it's update on reload. Okay, so we could reload this, and it should apply the new version of our service worker. And as you can see here, let's try to go online first. Okay, there we go, and we can go offline. So it's currently offline. Then we could refresh our page. Still we're getting the right output for our app, where we can see the menu. We could see also the icons right here. But if we go here in our about page, we're getting this particular output, and later on we will add also this particular about.html or in any other resource requested by our app. Now I want you to understand a certain concept in the PWA. So basically here we're getting this output. Now if we try to change our for example the index.html, so let's just add maybe here, let's just say h4, and then let's just say contacts. Okay, save, and let's go back into our browser and refresh our page. And I'm just gonna uncheck the update on reload right now, because it will try to handle the problems that I'm gonna show you. And I'm gonna uncheck this also, the offline mode, and let's try to refresh this. So basically now we're getting this output, but we change our index.html to display the contacts h4 right here. But if we refresh the page, we're still not getting the contacts h4 tag, right? So that's because we are requesting the resources coming from our cache, and we're intercepting the fetch event. And if that particular request event is present in the cache, then return that particular resource, otherwise return the request. So currently we're not getting the up-to-date version of our index.html because currently this is coming from the cache. Okay, now what we could do to solve this particular problem is to version our cache, meaning we will try to add new version for this particular cache. So for example, this will be the old version, and then we could add a new cache, which is version 2 or something. So we could do that inside our service worker file. So we could add here the, for example, version 1 or v1. There you go. Save that. Save our service worker file, and then go back to our browser, refresh our page, and if we go here inside our cache, as you can see here, we do have two cache versions. This is the original one, and this is the second one that we have added just a while ago, right here. As you can see here, app-shell-rs-rs-v1. So that's the latest version of the resources that being added, but still we're not getting the contacts h4 element that we have added inside our index.html right here. That's because the PWA or the app tries to look at or tries to search for the index.html file between this versions of our cache. So it tries to look into the version or the old version, and also it tries to search for the index.html inside the version 1 of our cache. So it doesn't know really which one to choose between the index.html from the version 1 or the index.html from the old version of the cache. So that's why we need to address this problem, and we need to modify our service worker file. And in the next video, I'm going to teach you how you can add versions to your cache and delete the old versions and return the new version of our cache or the resources from our cache. So from the previous tutorial, we have learned that even if we have a new version for our cache, we're still getting the old version of our cache inside our app. So if we go into our browser and open up our app right here, so even if we change something in here, for example, as you can see here, we have the h4 or the heading 4 with the contacts word here, or and as you can see inside our page, we are not seeing the contacts heading 4 right here. That's because the app itself is using the old version of our cache. So even if we are updating our cache right here, it says version 2, and refresh our page. So basically we save our service worker file and then refresh our page. Still we're not getting the contacts heading right here. So that's because if we open the application tab of our developer console, right here we have the different versions of our cache. We have here the first version, and then the second, and then the third version that is newly created by us. So even if we change something inside our app or inside the index.html, we're getting the old version. That's because the application cannot identify which version to get the index.html file, because there are 3 right here, right? There are 3 index.html coming from the first version, the second version right here also. The third version also contains the index.html. So we need to find a way to let the user or let the application know where to get the index.html. So in order for us to solve that, we need to open up our service worker file, and in here inside our activate event listener right here. So currently we're just logging the service worker has been activated, but inside here we need to do something, and we want to delete the old versions of our resources, or I mean the cache, so that the application will know where to get specific files requested. Okay, so in here again, where we will try to delete the older versions of the cache. So currently we do have the 3 versions. So what we need is to add a logic right here to delete the old version of the cache. Now the same with the install event right here, we need to use or make use of the event object right here, and use the wait until function. Again, the purpose of wait until function is just to prolong the event of the activation of the service worker, so that we could, add more logic or add more code and do something before the activate event ends. There you go. Now what we could do here is we could open up the caches, and then we could specify the keys, and then this particular function is asynchronous, so it takes time to execute. So we could add the then method right here, and then open this one up, and then we could specify the keys right here. So these are all the keys returned coming from this line right here. So keys equals, not equals, we're gonna do, or we're gonna add the function right here, and then what we could do first right now is to console.log and then the keys from our cache. So again, we're using the wait until function right here to prolong the activate event, and while prolonging the activate event, we could do something like opening the cache right here and getting all the keys, and then this is an asynchronous function where we could tuck in the then function right here, and then we could get the keys returned from this particular function right here. And for now, we will just display all the keys returned coming from our cache. So what we could do is save the service worker file right here and go back to our browser, and then what we could do is refresh. Let's make sure to refresh, and then instead of waiting, we could skip waiting right here, and our service worker will be activated, and it will execute all this logic right here because our service worker is now newly activated. And we could see all the keys right here. For example, there are 3 keys that we have from the cache. So the first version, which is the original one that we have created from the previous tutorials, and we have the second one, which is we labeled it as the version 1, and the third one, which is labeled as version 2. So currently we're just returning all the keys coming from our cache. So what we could do also is try to remove the old versions of the cache, again, for us to tell the application where to get specific files being requested by our app. So inside our service worker.js file, inside here, instead of displaying the keys, what we want is, of course, to delete. So I'm gonna write in a couple of lines of codes right here, and then I'm gonna explain it later on. So return promise that all, and then we're gonna use the keys, and then that filter. Then in here we could specify the key equals key. We're just checking if the key is equal to our, or not equal to our cache name right here. So key, cache name, and then if it is not the current cache name, then what we could do is map map the content of this particular return, and then map that, and we will try to delete that particular key. So key and then caches that delete. There you go. So basically what we are trying to do here is to return a promise, and then because our caches that keys expect promises, and then that's why we're using the promises.all right here, and then we're using the keys we got from this particular function, and then we're trying to filter the keys. Okay, so if a particular key from these keys are not equal to the current version, so meaning the current version will be excluded from this filter right here, and then it will return all the cache key which is not the current cache name right here, and then we could delete that particular key. Okay, so we're specifying here caches that delete. Okay, now if we save this and let's go back to our browser and refresh, so we're getting now a new version of our service worker, and then it says right here that we have an option to skip waiting. Okay, because this is waiting for the new version of our service worker to be activated. So what we could do is skip waiting. So we could click on this, and then of course the new version of our service worker should be activated. But we're getting the error right here: failed to execute delete on cache storage, 1 argument required but only 0%. So we need to configure what is wrong with our code inside our service worker. So it says right here, the service worker.js, the line 37. So failed to execute delete on cache storage, 1 argument required but only 0%. So let's go back right here. So we're getting this particular error right here: failed to execute delete on cache storage, 1 argument required but only 0%. That's because we need to save also other elements into our cache, because currently we're just saving the static, decomposing of the app shell of our app shell. But basically there are other resources that we need to save. For example, if we go to the about section of our app, and it says right here that this site can be reached, or simply because this particular resource right here is not saved into our cache. So we're gonna do that in the next video, and we will resolve the issue of deleting the cache after activation or on activation of our service worker. Okay, and from the previous tutorial we have a problem with the other request. So for example, if we navigate away from our app shell, we should be able to get the resources also. So for example, the CSS files, the font, any icons we are trying to request for our application to work. So basically, as you can see here, we have an error for this particular item right here, which is the font icon for material icons right here. So we will add this later on into our cache. But for now, let's just focus on the problem at hand. Now, currently, we're setting the application as offline right here. If we refresh this, we should still be able to see the app shell, okay, of our application. Now, if we go to the other pages, so for example, let's go to the About section, and we will get this particular page. So this site can't be reached, so that means that we haven't added this particular request into our cache. So in order for us to do that, or in order for us to add that into our cache, just like what we have here for our app shell, and even if our application is offline currently, should be able to see the CSS, the styles, the structure of our application. Now we could do the same, for example, for our About section. So we could save this particular request, and then we should be able to see this particular page even if our application is offline. Now let's go back to the IDE and try to implement that. So in here, we will try to limit also the size of our cache by using introducing another function. So in here, let me just add that particular function. So this will be cache size limit function. So basically what we want is to delete the older versions of the cache and then make use of the new version of the cache. So that's the purpose of this particular function. So const and then limit cache size equals to a function and then name and then the size as the parameter, and then open and close curly braces. And right here we're gonna open the cache, so that will be caches and then open, and we're gonna use the name of our cache specified by our parameter. Okay, so name, we're gonna open that particular cache, and then we're gonna tag in the then method, okay, or function, and we're gonna add open and close parentheses, or I mean curly braces right here, and in here we're gonna specify the cache. There we go. And in here we need to return all the keys inside our cache. So basically we're gonna call the function keys and then tag in the then function, and then open and close curly braces right here, and inside here we're gonna specify the keys of our cache. So basically what we're trying to do is get all the keys. So the key will serve as the name of our cache. For example, I'm gonna explain that later on inside the browser, but for now let's just continue writing this particular function. Okay, so we're gonna check here if keys that length is greater than the size, or the specified size here as the parameter, and then we're gonna have to add the curly braces, and then what we will do is try to delete the keys, open and close, and then keys, and then 0. Right after that we're gonna have to add in the then function, and then we're gonna call again the limit cache function. So basically this will try to reiterate, okay, if we have this particular if we have successfully deleted this particular key, and of course if the keys that length is greater than size. So if it is not greater than the specified parameter size, then it will not delete the cache that we have inside our browser. Okay, so we may need to remove this and then add it here. Okay, same with our keys right here, and put it right here. There you go. So basically this particular function, as I've said, is just to limit the size of our cache, because we don't want to overload our browser with old caches that we don't want to use inside our application. So that's why we need to call this function later on inside our fetch, because inside our fetch we're trying to save caches, right? So in here we're checking if the request matches an item inside our cache, then return that particular cache resource. Otherwise, return the request. There you go. But what we could do is, instead of returning the request, what we could do is fetch, call in the fetch function right here, and then tag in the then method or function, and then fetch. This is the fetch resource. Okay, and in here we're gonna have to open the dynamic cache. So that will be caches, and then open dynamic. Do we have a dynamic cache name right here? So const dynamic cache. We're calling this dynamic because we don't really know any other assets that we're gonna save right here, as opposed to the cache name that we have here, because we know all the assets that we're trying to request. Okay, and all these assets make up the application shell of our PWA. So what we have here is to add a dynamic cache name. Yeah. And what we could call it like dynamic cache v1. Okay, and then we could use this particular const right here. We're gonna open that particular cache, and then the then method, and then cache, open and close curly braces, and then we could say cache dot put, and then we're gonna have to get the request URL. Okay, and then fetch resource dot clone. So we're using clone right here because we don't have any access later on if we return this directly. So that's why we need to add this particular function that clone right here. Okay, so and then right here we're gonna add the function limit cache size, and then we're gonna specify the dynamic cache name, and of course we want to save like 15 items or 15 resources inside our dynamic cache. So again, the purpose of this is to save only 15 resources. Okay, you could make it 10 or 8 or 5. It depends on your preference. So let me show you that. So for example, we want to make this 5. So there should be, only 5 items inside our dynamic cache. There you go. And then after this will be return and then the resource. Okay. And right after the right after this, we have the then method or function. What we could do is tag in also the catch method if something goes wrong or went wrong with our operation above. Then we could have this particular logic right here. So event, and then we're gonna use the request and then URL. So we're gonna check if the request is .html. So for example, the request is, for example, about.html, and then something went wrong with the request, then we're gonna have to return a default page. So that will be greater than -1. So meaning the request contained this particular extension, the .html. So we're gonna have to return caches and then match, and we're gonna have to specify the default page. So that will be pages /default.html. Okay, and I think we have we didn't add that here inside our assets. So let me add that. We're gonna add the pages, and then /default.html. And inside our default, we could change this. So for example, we have here, you cannot view this page offline. And then we add here an option to go to the home page of our app, which is index.php. So let's try this, save our service worker file, and let's hope that it will work for the first time. And what we could do first is uncheck this, and let's just clear the site data for now. Okay. Service worker, let's just refresh our page. Okay. Home. Okay, so we're getting all the resources that we want. And then if we go here inside our about page, we have this, right? And let's try to make this offline, and then refresh our page. Okay, so as you can see here, we have this particular output even if our application is offline. So basically, we also save the resources for our about section right here. And if we check for the cache, so we have here the dynamic cache, and basically now we only have this particular cache items right here, and we set the limit of this particular cache into 5 items only. So whenever it exceeds 5 items, it will try to delete that, so that we will have a limited size of our cache. Okay, so I think that's all there is to it in this video tutorial, and in the next video we're gonna have to make use of the form, new contact, and then we're gonna use the Firebase database so that we could save our users or contacts right here, because I believe currently we're just setting the contacts statistically or statically. We're doing that manually, so we need to fetch the contacts coming from our Firebase, and we're gonna set up that. And in this video we're gonna be adding the Firebase database, and also we will try to configure it within our project. But before we go any further with that, let's try to fix first I just want to correct something from the last video. We have added index.php here as as an option if the page goes offline. Now we don't have the index.php file because what we have here is index.html, so we're gonna change this. This will be HTML, index.html right there. So whenever the page goes offline, then we will try to redirect the user into the home page of our app, which is index.html, not PHP. Okay, so let's just save this and let's go to the index.html. We're gonna add few lines here inside this particular file, and that's for the configuration of our Firebase database, because as you can see currently we're not saving the we're gonna start this open with live server. We're not saving actually the contacts. So if we try to type in here something and then number of the contact and add contact, so there will be no contact added here. And this particular record is we set this manually for now, and also this one. And what we want is of course to query this data coming from our database and also save information using this form, and we're gonna save the information into the database, and right after that we're gonna query all the contacts and display it right here. Okay, so in order for us to do that, let's go to the Firebase. So this is console.firebase.com. So we're gonna be using this particular technology, and in here we're gonna create a database. So as you can see here, I have multiple projects created right here, but we're gonna create a new one for our project, and this will be entirely for our contacts. So what we will do is click on this add project, and by the way, I'm gonna put the link in the description box below, so you could follow this particular link and you could create your own project. And this particular Firebase technology, guys, offers a lot of features where you could add authentication to your application. You could also have a real-time database. You could also have, or you could also host your files by using Firebase. But in this particular video tutorial, we're going to be focusing on the real-time database. So now let's create our project, and we're going to name our project as PK, or short for Programming Knowledge, and then we're going to have like contacts DB. There you go. And let's click on continue. Well, for now we're not gonna use analytics, so we could disable this by clicking this particular button right here to disable the analytics for this particular project. And of course, right after that, we're gonna have to click on the create project, and we're gonna wait for a few seconds for the project to be created. And there you go, we now have our project ready. So click on continue. And so as you can see here, we have the options, like for example, the authentication. So if we click on that, we can see different options also for log in or sign in into the application. So for example, you click on get started, and we could authenticate our users, for example, by using email or password, phone, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, or other accounts that you might want to use for your application. But for now, we're not going to use authentication for our application, because what we want is to save only the contacts that we will be adding inside our application. And this particular database, guys, we will be adding a feature that it should work also even if the application or the device itself goes offline. So we're gonna have to add that functionality later on. Even if our database is currently sitting in the cloud or online, we could also save the information locally, and then later on, if the internet connection is available, then the information will be uploaded here inside our Firebase database. So now let's go to the real-time database, as you can see here. Okay, as I've said, we're gonna use this particular feature, real-time database. We're gonna store and sync data in real time by using this particular Firebase feature. Okay, so let's go back to the project overview, and in here we could add, so click on this particular option right here, which is adding an application for the web. So we have option for iOS, Android, and of course we have the web. So click on that, and we're gonna register our application. So for example, we're gonna name our application as contacts, PK contacts, and we're not gonna set up Firebase hosting for now. So let's just leave it as it is, and then register app. Okay, and we will be given this particular script or configuration script for our database. So all we have to do is copy all this information right here. So click on this, and let's go back into our index.html right here, and then right before adding different scripts right here, let's just paste the Firebase config script. There you go. So let's just indent this to make this a bit easy for the eyes. There you go. Now we have here the Firebase app right here. Okay, and then I think we could also use the Firestore instead of real-time database. We could also use the Firestore. So what we could do is copy and paste. Copy this particular line and paste it right below. And instead of Firebase app, we're gonna change this into Firebase Firestore. Okay, so we now have two lines here. The first one is for the Firebase app, and the second one will be for the Firebase Firestore.js file. Now what we could do is below this line, Firebase.initialize app, we could add here, we could declare a const, and then we're gonna name this db equals to Firebase dot Firestore. There you go. Firebase that Firestore. So we're gonna use this particular cons right here all throughout our application. So for example, when we're saving information, when we're deleting information coming from our database. So now let's go back to the Firebase database. So for now, let's just continue to console. And as you can see, we have here also the option, the cloud Firestore, right? So you could click on that, and this is one of the feature of the Firebase, that you could use or you could save information, and this is some sort of a database. So for now, let's just click on the create database inside the cloud Firestore, create database, and then we're gonna have to start from test mode right here. Click on that and click on next. Okay, and then you have to choose any location you want. Also, if for example you want to use US West or Asia East or something, doesn't matter. So enable, and let's just wait for a few seconds. Okay, and then we could create our own collection right inside this particular Firestore database. Okay, so this is what we have for now, and right here we could click on the start collection. So of course what we're trying to collect is contacts, so we will name that collection as contacts right there, and then click on next. Okay, and of course we could add here some information. For example, the field will be name, and for example we're gonna have to add John Doe right here, and then the second one will be contact number. Okay, and then just random number right here for now, and then we could click on this, we could populate on this, right, this one, and we could add text to that. But for now, let's just use this particular option, automate or auto generate the ID, and then click on save information. So that will be the first information for our contacts collection right here. So I think that's all there is to it, guys, in this particular video. And in the next video, we're going to be implementing this particular database inside our application. So in this video, we have added Firebase database inside our application, and copy also the configuration files or configuration script, and then we initialize our cloud Firestore database. So basically, from the previous tutorial, we already created our database using the Firebase database, and in this video we're gonna implement it and integrate it into our project. So basically what we have here, index.html, and then in here we are including the JavaScript file for our app, and then we also have the common.js. So if we try to look at the app.js, we can see that we have here the service worker. We're checking if the service worker is in Navigator, if in other words, if the service worker is supported by the browser. So we're doing the registration of our service worker file right here. And we also have the common.js, where we're just implementing the right side menu of our page. So if we try to preview this in a browser, so let's just open it with live server, and then we're gonna check the capability of this left side menu, left and right side menu. So click on this, and then the sidebar will appear, And the same thing with the right side. If you click on the plus button, so we can see the right sidebar, as you can see here, where we could input our contact name and contact number. So as I've said, in this video we're gonna integrating the Firebase database into our project. So we have here the index.html, and then we're gonna have to import also another file for our project. So I'm just going to copy the script right here, type in script, and then type text and then JavaScript. Okay, and src will be js and then /db.js. okay, and we're gonna create this db.js. So under js folder directory, we could create a new file and then name this as db, and then the file name will be js. Okay, there you go. So in this inside this particular file, we're gonna add a function that will enable us to sync our database into the online Firebase database, and it should be able to synchronize the data coming from our app, the offline data, and then it should synchronize with the online data in Firebase. And also this particular file will enable us to add and delete the contacts, okay, from our project, and of course delete it with or delete it also online. Okay, so it should be synchronized. Now in adding the contact, we're gonna add here a new comment. So this is for adding new contact. There you go. And let me change first. Okay, I think that's okay. We're gonna have to create a new constant for our form equals, and then we're gonna select, or we're gonna use the query selector. There you go. Open and close, and we're just gonna target the form. Okay, so we're gonna add an event listener to this, so that will be form that's using our const variable form, and then add event listener. Okay, and our event will be submit. So basically what we're trying to do here is that selecting the form, and whenever the user submit the form, we have to execute a function. Okay, so let's just add comma here, and then comma, and then event, and there function, open and close curly braces, and inside here we're gonna have to use the event and then prevent default. Okay, so we're preventing the default behavior of submitting the form, because the default behavior of submitting the form, the page will try to reload, and we don't want that. What we want is to wait for the processing of all the information within this particular form before reloading, or before loading the form itself. Okay, so cons again, and then the contact equals, and then we're gonna have to create a new what do I call this, create a new object consisting of the name and the contact number of our contact. Okay, so name, and then form, then name that value. Okay, comma, and then number will be equal to the form numbers, and then value. So basically what we're trying to do is assigning the value of our name field into the name property right here, and also the numbers field into the number property. Okay, then semicolon. Right after that, we're gonna use the db object, or variable. I think it's here inside the index.html. We created this const db right here, so we're referencing that, and then db collection, open and close. And as you can probably remember, we created the contacts collection in the Firebase, and then we're gonna have to call on the add function, and inside that we're gonna supply the contact that we have created right here. Okay, and then whenever there's an error, then we could catch that by using the catch statement. Tuck in the catch statement right here, and then error, and then arrow function, just to have some sort of feedback whenever there's a problem with adding the contact into our Firebase database. So for now, let's just display it on the console. So console log, or console.log, and then the error itself. Okay, and after that, we're gonna set the forms value, or those fields, the numbers and the name. So we're gonna set that into empty, some sort of resetting the value of our fields. So we're gonna use the form const form name, and then value equals empty string. Again, we're just resetting the value of our fields. Form.numbers dot value equals empty string. Okay, so save this. As you can see inside our index.html, let's try to see. So we have here the fields name and then the numbers. So what we're trying to do with our add new contact script is that we're getting the value of the name. Okay, so we have that here, and then also we're getting the numbers value also here, and then right after that one, we're adding it to the collection contacts, specifying the contact that we have created right here, which consists of the name and the number of the contact. And also right after adding that, we're just resetting the value of our form, meaning right after adding it, we want the fields to be empty. Okay, so that's like resetting the value of our form. Okay, so in this video, guys, we're going to add also the delete logic for this particular project. So we have the add logic, so now we will try to work with the logic of delete. Now, in order for us to to be able to delete a contact coming from our database, we will try to listen also a click event inside our DOM, so inside our project. So basically we will declare here a constant, and then we will try to select the contact container equals document, and then query selector, and we'll specify here the class name for the contacts, or I mean the contact container, which is contacts. So this particular element is located here inside our index.html file, and we can see here we have the class contacts, right? So basically what we're trying to do is try to listen or add event to this particular area right here. So whenever the user clicks on this delete icon, so the data should be deleted. Okay, so semicolon, and then we're gonna say here contact container, and then add event listener, and we're gonna specify here the click event, and we're gonna have to add a function right here. So inside this function, we could console event, or console log the event. There you go. And then we could also check, for example, if the event, the target tag name or equals the I, then we could say const id equals the event target, and then get attribute, and then data id, and we're gonna use this id to delete the specific contacts from our database, our Firebase database. So db collection, and then open and close parenthesis, we're gonna say here contacts, this is our collection contacts, and then doc, and then open and close parenthesis, specify the id, and then the function, or the function delete. So this will try to delete the contact or the record contact from our Firebase database. Okay, so after this, here, before the logic of adding new contact, we will also add the real-time listener for our project. For example, if we add a contact, we should be able to detect that there's a new contact, and it should sync with our display inside here in the index.html. So we're gonna add here, as I've said, real-time listener for any changes, like for example adding or deleting a contact. So we could say here db collection, and then of course again specify the contacts collection, and then on snapshot. So this is coming from the Firebase, and then this particular function will accept another function snapshot, and then arrow, and then we're gonna use this snapshot variable right here. Okay, so snapshot, and then doc changes. If there's like changes inside the document, then we're gonna iterate through that collection. So by using for each, and then each, and then let's make this a function, and another parameter change, and we're gonna make use of this change right here. So we're gonna check if change that type equals to added. So if the change or the type of change is added, then we could render contact, and we will try to create this function render contact. So that will be change, and then doc, and then data, and then change dot doc id. Okay, so again, we will create this render contact function, and we will specify the data and of course the id. There you go. And if we will try to check also if the type of change is removed, then we're gonna have to add another logic for that. So change that type equals to remove, then instead of render contact, we will use remove contact. There you go. So again, we will create functions remove contact and render contact later on. So that will be change.doc.id. Okay, save this. So now we have the add new contact logic. We also have the delete a new contact, or delete a contact, and also we are trying to listen for changes or real-time changes for this particular collection contacts. And if the type of change is added, then we will render the new contact into the DOM of our project. And if the change type is equal to remove, then we will try to remove that from our database also. So after that, we will open the commons.js. So in here, we will try to implement the render contact function. Okay, so render contact, it will be constant render contact equals data, the parameters data and id. As you can remember here, we supply the render contact with this particular parameters, contact data and doc id. So we will render the HTML, so that will be const and then HTML equals, okay, and then backticks. There you go. And inside the HTML will be the HTML that we are using right here. So we have the contact details, contact options, and also the image. So what we could do is try to copy and paste this and paste it here. Okay, now we're going to interpolate the values for our contacts, like for example the names and the numbers, and also that's the name and numbers. So instead of John Doe, we're gonna be using interpolation here, $, and then open and close curly braces. We're gonna specify the data and then name, and in here we're gonna change that also, open and close curly braces, and then data that number. Okay, and inside here the delete icon, then we're going to specify the data id, or data attribute with id, and we're gonna add interpolation again here, specifying the id. So we got this id coming from our parameter. There you go. And after render contact, we will also add inside this render contact, we will append this HTML into our contacts. What do you call this? Contacts div. Okay, so we will try to append that inside this particular div, contacts. So what we could do is try to add a const right here. That will be const contacts, and then document, and then query selector, open and close parentheses, and then specify the contacts class. There you go. And we will add append contacts, and then inner HTML. We're setting that into the HTML that we have here, where we interpolated the string values of our contacts, say for example the name and the number. Okay, so this is rather long tutorial, and I hope you are following with this tutorial. And in the next video, we're going to add also the remove contact function that we are trying to use here. Okay, so we implemented the render contact already. So in this video, we're going to work with our database, and I would like to suggest also in this particular video, I would like to suggest additional features that you might want to explore by yourself. But yeah, this is the conclusion of our PWA video tutorial series, and in this video also we're going to be able to persist the offline data of our application or the progressive web app. Now, basically, we have this particular web page right here, and this is the overall look of our PWA application. Now let's because this is not dynamic, as I've said from the previous tutorial, this is a static information, so we want to remove this from the UI whenever our PWA is starting. So let's go open up our the source code of our application, and inside index.html we will see here the static information being added to this particular div right here, or this particular div. Okay, contacts with the class contacts right here. So we're adding the contacts into this particular div. Okay, so we have here the first one and the second one. So let's just, for now, let's just comment this one out, and also this one, because we don't want to display this whenever our app is loading. So save that, and let's go back into our browser, and let's hard reload our application. So currently we don't have the information right here. That's because we don't have any contact added into our database. So if we click on this add, we should be able to add a new contact. So for example, John Doe, and some random contact numbers. Okay, and then add. So as you can see here, you have newly added, or you have a new contact added into our database, and this is persisted, or this is uploaded into our Firebase database. Okay, we don't want to add a new document. Let's just view this one, and we have here the John Doe added into our database. And of course, we could add a new one, for example, Cesar, maybe I don't know, Greg, Odin, and then new number, and then add new contact. So take note of the contact name, and it should be added right here inside our database, Firestore database, Greg, Odin, and of course the added number. Now we could also add another one just to test, the delete function, press delete, and then some random numbers also, and of course we could delete this. Okay, so let's just check first if it is present inside our Firestore database, and okay, test delete with the numbers. Now we could delete this. Okay, click on that, and we should be able to delete that also inside our Firestore database. So as you can see, there are two actions being taken by the user. adding and deleting a contact, and all of this information are being persisted into our Firestore database, right? Now, what happens if our browser goes offline? Okay, we want to add a feature that even if it is offline, the user should be able to add a new contact. And later on, if the browser goes online again, you should be able to persist this data into our Firestore database, because currently we don't have that kind of functionality. So that's why we need to add that. And in order for us to add that, let's open up our VS Code and open specifically the db.js file. And before listening to the real-time updates of our contacts database, let's just add a new logic right here. And basically we're going to use the db object or db variable and enable persistence. Okay, enable persistence, and then we're gonna add a catch method right here, or function, and then it's going to have a parameter, or I mean the return. And then if we're gonna check that particular return, if that particular return code equals failed precondition. Okay, it just means that probably this particular application is open at multiple tabs at once. Okay, now what we could do is console.log and then persistence. We could say here persistence failed. Okay, otherwise else if error code equals unimplemented, and then open and close curly braces, and let's say here lack of browser support, because there are browsers that don't support the capability of persistence, also progressive web apps, so you have to be mindful of that. And let's say console.log and then persistence not supported. Okay, so there you have it. We are enabling our database to have a persistence capability, so whenever or even if the browser goes offline, the user could still add a new contact, and whenever the browser goes online again, then the record should be uploaded into the Firebase database or Firestore database that we have online. Now let's just check this. Let's reload our app. Okay, and say for example inside our application we turned this to offline. Okay, still we have the output of our application. Okay, and then let's try to add a new record. So for example, this is Jane Doe, and then random numbers for the contact number, and add contact. So what you could see here is the newly added contact, right? But here we are seeing this Jane Doe, so I think this is not completely offline, but this should work even if the app is offline, and it's going to save the information locally, and then if the user or if the browser detects that the device has like an internet service or internet data, then the information will be uploaded into our database. Okay, so by turning this by checking this particular button offline, it should convert our app, or I mean, it disables the internet connection, right? So whenever we add a new contact right here, we should be able to save this locally and add the information uh, to the Firebase database whenever the device is online. Okay, I think basically that's all there is to it in this particular video tutorial series for progressive web apps. Okay, and as you can see here, we have added the offline capability. Whenever the user tries to add a new contact offline, then it should be able to sync that into our cloud store or cloud Firestore database online. So again guys, thank you for watching and thank you for following this particular video tutorial series, and I hope you learned something especially about progressive web apps. And actually there are a lot of features that you might want to explore on your own. So for example, if the user clicks on this and add a new contact, then you could try to close the form. Okay, so currently the form is not closing, right? So you might want to explore how to close this particular form when the user tries to add a new contact. And of course, if you want, you can also implement a alert. For example, the user tries to click on this one, it should try to warn the user that you are deleting an information or a sensitive information, and just try to check if the user wants to go through that process of removing the contact. Okay, so if you click that, currently this is automatically deleted from our database. Okay, so I am challenging you to add a new feature that will ask the user if he really want to delete a particular record inside our Firestore database. So I think that's all there is to it, guys. Thank you for watching again, and if you are new here in our YouTube channel and you like content about programming, different programming languages like Python, Java, C#, Visual Basic, and other related programming languages, you could follow along, or you could follow our YouTube channel by subscribing and press the notification bell so you'll get updated whenever we have a new upload regarding or about programming. So thank you again and see you in the next video tutorial series.